Tonight, it's the closest three-way race in the province. We bring you to the riding of St. John's East. That story and
the famous bronze statue of aviation pioneer Amelia Earhart here in Harbour Grace has been stolen, and town leaders are incensed.
Very, very disappointed in what happened in our town last night.
She was an inspiration, and for someone to have done this is shocking, to be honest.
With the federal election coming up, election signs are around almost every corner.
When there's a kind of sign on a lawn, it kind of conveys a stronger social message.
What they can and can't do, I'll have that coming up.
I don't know, Deb was strange. He just didn't know why people made such a fuss.
He was a police officer and model boat builder, and soon Otto Kelland will be inducted into the National Songwriters Hall of Fame.
This is CBC Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. There's a sense of disbelief in Harbour Grace this evening. An important piece of the town's aviation history has been stolen. Here and Now's Terry Roberts has our top story.
Just like the famous aviatress that it honors, the bronze statue of Amelia Earhart here in Harbour Grace has disappeared without a trace. For years, it's been on display at the Spirit of Harbour Grace Park, in the shadow of this vintage airplane. A bronze statue sculpted over a period of many months by Lubin Boykov of Amelia Earhart, the first woman pilot to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean, positioned so she's looking towards the airfield from which her plane lifted off on May 20th, 1932. This park is a tribute to the town's storied aviation history, made possible by the generosity of the late Roger Pike, a leading businessman and aviation enthusiast. It's a popular tourist attraction, and the statue was a centerpiece. But daylight revealed this dreadful scene. The statue, weighing hundreds of kilograms, ripped from its foundation during the early hours. This is footage from a nearby surveillance camera. It shows activity for several hours around the statue. Concealed by darkness, a vehicle reverses into the park just before 3 a.m. The statue is loaded aboard, and the vehicle departs on Jamie's Way. A task requiring many hands.
It's a loss for our province, it's a loss for aviation.
She was an inspiration, and for someone to have done this is shocking, to be honest.
The RCMP is investigating. The town is offering a reward for any information that leads to the statue's return. The local MHA is also the Minister of Women and Gender Equality. So plundering this statue, which honors a woman who inspired generations, hits hard.
You know, the amount of time and energy that went into actually taking that statue and removing it, perhaps that time could have been better spent getting help.
The big fear is that whoever stole this statue will melt it down and sell the copper as scrap metal, fetching a paltry amount of money for a piece of art that's priceless to this town. Town leaders are cringing at the thought. The statue of Earhart is irreplaceable.
Let's find out who did it, and let's get her back where she deserves to be.
The alloy used to make this statue is a very specific mix of bronze, 95% copper. So town leaders are asking scrapyard owners to be vigilant. Amelia Earhart, meanwhile, disappeared 88 years ago while attempting to circumnavigate the globe. Her death remains a mystery. History buffs are hoping for a different outcome for the statue that honors this trailblazer. Terry Roberts, CBC News, Harbour Grace.
Well, the Premier of New Brunswick is in St. John's speaking with Andrew Furey about reducing trade barriers between the two provinces. Premiers Furey and Susan Holt signed a memorandum of understanding to improve trade and labor mobility. They say it's part of an effort to boost the Canadian economy and combat tariffs from the United States. The premiers are also asking the federal government to drop regulations preventing the shipment of Newfoundland and Labrador's oil to New Brunswick.
That will allow our oil and gas to go to New Brunswick, to their refinery. Synovus and West White Rose and West White Rose Extension used to be processed, a significant portion of it used to be processed in New Brunswick. There is no reason that New Brunswick can't handle our crude product. There are some regulatory hurdles. We look forward to being out of this writ period and seeing the commitments that were made to look at eliminating some of these barriers come into effect so it can benefit the people of Newfoundland and Labrador as it can the people in New Brunswick.
Well, meantime, Andrew Furey says he's only heard back from one major party leader after sending identical letters to the 4 candidates running for the country's top job. Those letters were sent to the Liberals, Conservatives, NDP, and Bloc Québécois, listing 7 priority areas for Newfoundland and Labrador. Furey calls for commitments to eliminate Marine Atlantic fees, cut oil and gas emission caps, and streamline environmental assessments. Furey also wants promises on joint management of the province's fisheries, improvements to equalization, investments in 5-wing Goose Bay, and additional funding for $10 a day childcare. The Premier says so far he's only heard from Liberal leader Mark Carney.
The right thing for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians is in a time of federal election is to put forward issues that are pertinent and important to Newfoundland and Labrador. As for why leaders don't respond to those issues, I think that's a testament to their character, and perhaps those are best questions addressed to them. But I was reassured by the response, the verbal response from Mr. Carney.
Well, the union representing teachers in this province has elected its new president. Dale Lamb will take over as head of the Teachers Association when Trent Langdon finishes his 2-year term in August. Lamb spoke at the NLTA's biennial meeting in St. John's today. He celebrated the new education funding in the provincial budget and highlighted some of the big issues facing teachers, including a growing amount of violence in schools.
But we need to sustain pressure on key decision makers as hate is rising in Newfoundland and Labrador society. We're hearing of more crime and security risks in all communities in this province. Our schools are not immune to that. In fact, our schools, sadly, are often a venue for these events. The creation of productive citizens is most important to creating a safer society. But we cannot all.
Well, it's the closest 3-way race in the province. The NDP and Conservatives both believe they have a shot at taking St. John's East from the Liberals. And as Here and Now's Peter Cowan reports, each has a very different message to convince voters.
I'm Joanne Thompson, running for re-election.
This election isn't what Joanne Thompson was expecting when she decided to run again. Last year, her Liberal Party was way behind in the polls.
I was in for the race, expecting it could be incredibly difficult. Trump happened, the U.S. election, and it changed the narrative. And the very real threats to Canada and the threats to global security.
It's that threat Thompson is focusing on, pitching the party's new leader as the best option in a difficult time.
I hear at the doors that people feel Mark Carney has the skills, the experience, the knowledge to bring the country forward.
Thompson was a rookie before. Now she's a cabinet minister. She's been in charge of seniors and recently the fishery, portfolios that helped boost her profile.
I've been knocking on doors for 2 years.
But the NDP candidate has been boosting her profile as well. Mary Shortall came in second last time. Now she's the National Party president, and her leader has made trips to the area in the lead up to the election. Her pitch isn't focused on party. Rather, she's trying to convince voters that her independence is what would make her a good MP.
My discussion with people at the door is how important it is to have a voice that will fight for them in Ottawa, maybe not as a member of the governing party, but for sure as someone who has their back, someone who knows the issues, someone who has lived experience.
It's a similar story for the Conservative candidate. David Brazel has more than a decade in provincial politics, most recently as the interim Progressive Conservative leader.
I'm a proud Conservative, but I'm also even prouder a Progressive Conservative.
He's trying to convince voters who may be wary of Pierre Poilievre that he'll protect social programs.
I have a social conscience. People know that if you know the agencies that I've been involved in and groups that I've helped found over the years, a lot of them are primarily around social delivery of agencies for marginalized individuals or citizens at risk.
He says talk of Trump has faded from the campaign, replaced with issues closer to home.
Particularly the last 2 weeks. Total different conversation with constituents when I knock doors, or even when I run into somebody who I talked to 5 weeks ago. And I get maybe the anxiety about what was happening with Donald Trump, because as we all know, he was all over it, that's settled now, and now we're getting back to domestic issues.
While you may not see their signs, there are two other candidates, Samuel Klett for the Communist Party and Otis Crandell with the Greens. Crandell says the Greens' pitch on climate change is finding a home even in an oil-producing province.
We need to prepare people for other jobs afterwards, and that's one of our selling points, is that we want a just transition. We don't want to just cut off the oil and shut down that industry and make people unemployed.
With strong campaigns from the Liberals, Conservatives, and NDP, voters across the country will be paying close attention as the first votes come in, offering the first clue about what election night may have in store for these parties. Peter Cowan, CBC News, St. John's.
Lots of election signs there, and that's something reporter Henrika Wilhelm has been looking into. Early turnout numbers have shattered records right across the country. More than 7 million Canadians have already voted in the advanced polls. But when it comes to campaigning, do signs still pack a punch?
These days, you can't go very far without coming across one of these. But in times of social media, are they still needed? Does it really matter whose name voters see on a sign?
To find out, we went here, Memorial University, to the Political Science Department. Scott Matthews studies elections and voting behavior, and he says research on the topic is limited.
There's a correlation between vote shares of a candidate and the number of lawn signs that they have, and with all aspects really of the campaign that can be counted. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the one thing is driving the other.
That means it's hard to say whether signs are pushing people towards a party or whether a party with a lot of support already is just able to put up more of them.
One recent study from the United States showed that there may be some effect, that more signs can increase the vote share by a small amount. Matthews says there's different theories how that can happen. One, name recognition.
There's actually quite a lot of psychological evidence to show that just something that is just familiar kind of starts with a little positivity.
Signs also give voters a sense of who has an actual chance at the seat.
Particularly, in a riding like St. John's East, where we have, 3 strong parties competing, people will struggle to figure out, well, who's really in this race here? If I say don't want to back party X, which of the other 2 parties do I vote for?
Another factor, placement. Busy road or quiet neighborhood. Matthews says there's arguments for both.
And on someone's lawn, it kind of conveys a stronger social message. These are people saying, we support this candidate. The offsetting thing is a sign on someone's lawn is going to be seen by far fewer people than the sign on the freeway on-ramp, that thousands of people are driving by.
And it matters what's on the sign too. Here in Canada, it's mostly name and party, and often a photo.
People make kind of inferences about people's competence and the kind of people they are, the kind of people they'll be in government based on their appearance.
But Matthews also says that's less important during a highly debated election. What matters more then are policy concerns and who people think can best represent them in Ottawa in turbulent political times. Henrika Wilhelm, CBC News, Mount Pearl.
It's lobster setting day on parts of the west coast and northern peninsula.
This town comes alive when the fishery starts. All the sheds and wharfs are full of people out chatting and talking, even if they're not working.
Well, taking a look at what's going to happen over the next couple of days, we've certainly got some wintry weather in the east, but that is going to change. We'll see some much milder air move in as we head through tomorrow and even towards the weekend as well. So expect that snow to end overnight across the Avalon. It'll be a bit unsettled tomorrow. We're still looking at the chance of a few showers in and around parts of the island, even up across parts of Labrador, but there is some sunshine in the forecast as well until we get to our next system. That's Sunday, Monday Monday. That will bring some potential significant rain to parts of the island and even across parts of Labrador. I'll break it all down for you coming up.
Otto Kellen's family is delighted he's being inducted into the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame. Kellen, who died in 2004, penned the folk classic Let Me Fish Off Cape St. Mary's. Host of the broadcast, Paula Gale, spoke with his daughter.
Take me back to my western boat. Let me fish off Cape St. Mary's.
Years ago, when I went to sea, we were in the port of Boston one day, and a young man came down on board, and he asked our captain, and he said, "Can I work my passage back home? I'm from Newfoundland." And the captain said, "Oh, I'm real sorry, but it's against the rules of the company." And he said, "Why don't you stay here? A lot of Newfoundlanders are making good up here." That was in 1923, you see. Well, he said, "Captain, I've been here, I worked here, I don't like it, and I'm from Bazentia Bay. I'm Bazentia Bay in Newfoundland, and I'd rather be back on board my Western boat. He said, fishing on 1 meal a day and 10 meals up here. So that gave me an idea. Well, strange enough, it was not until 1947 that I wrote the song, you know.
Right.
And I thought about it one day, and I was thinking about this incident where the young chap came down to look for a passage home, and suddenly I got the inspiration. I wrote the song in about 10 minutes.
Take me back to that snug green cove where the seas roll off their thunder.
Well, it's played all over the world. It has been played because when we would get royalties, Dad would get royalty sheets of where it's been played, and you would see it was done by an orchestra in the UK. It was played in Australia, royalties from Germany, New Zealand, Switzerland, Canada, United States, all over. And it plays at Beaumont Hamel. They especially requested Let Me Fish Off Cape St. Mary's to play in the pavilion at Beaumont Hamel Memorial.
And Jocelyn, what was your first reaction when you got word that this song will soon be inducted into the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame?
I was just shocked. I was absolutely shocked and like really happy, like elated, not happy, elated. And everybody in the family since, because we told everybody, you know, right away, and they were all like just amazed that people remember. Oh, he wrote lots of songs and poems. I don't call them songs particularly because music was always added after, was an afterthought with Dad, but he was a poet. I wasn't alive when he wrote Cape St. Mary's, of course, but one of my fondest memories, because Dad and I were really close, was seeing him sitting at the dining room table after supper with his fiddle and his pen and his paper, just writing poems or putting poems to music or whatever. And I was a little girl and I used to go in and watch him do it. Yeah, that's my earliest memory of him and his songs. Yeah.
Let me fish off Cape St. Mary.
Dad was strange in that he just didn't know why people made such a fuss. He didn't understand why someone would make, when he was given the Order of Canada, for instance, he said, like, why? And I said, well, Dad, it's because you've done an awful lot for charity, for one thing, and because you've preserved in one song, basically, our history. And then he kind of, you know, then he understood and he gladly accepted it, of course.
Let me fish off Cape St. Mary's.
But it took him a while to realize, always, his whole life, he never really understood that what this song meant to people, even though people told him time and time again, and he got awards for it, and it was played all over the world. Like it didn't really compute with him. So he really would have to think, you know, and when he did, then he realized, oh, that's such a big deal. Like that's a wonderful thing to happen, right? Yeah. And all he wanted was for his grandchildren and great-grandchildren, to remember.
Wharves are teeming with activity in many communities in western and northern Newfoundland for this week's start of the lobster season. Here Now's Layla Baudouin reports.
First time where I can't come out over the boat, right? We come to a sudden stop.
There's no time for stopping for inshore captains like Gary Payne. It's lobster setting day and these boats are off. Between sunset and sunrise, there's a lot of work to do.
It's a very busy time. This is mackerel.
From baiting traps to last-minute touches on boats. In communities all along this coast, like here in Rocky Harbor, getting ready for lobster setting day means all hands on deck.
Takes a lot of hands to get everything ready.
A lot of hands because there's a lot of lobster. The industry is experiencing a boom. That Sally's Cove-based lobster man Keith Way says he never thought was possible.
It's unbelievable what has happened over the last 3 or 4 years. The lobsters is unbelievable here.
Wharfs loaded with traps, a kind of buzz that these fishing towns are happy to have after decades of turbulent times. Port Saunders-based fisherman Brad House believes the lobster boom is a sign of conservation done right, or what's being left in the water.
It's a real good sign of small and seedy lobsters, we call them, spiny lobster.
There's a spiny one.
Introduced in 2017, the system was voluntary, marking those female lobsters carrying eggs, protecting them, and introducing these cutouts and traps that ensure lobsters below the legal size can escape.
When the lobsters go back here, any smaller ones, and usually if they can't get out through there, they're pretty much of measure that we can keep. And also, if we lose their trap, well, we got to put in these biodegradable hog rings, they call them. If we happen to lose a trap, they'll rust off, and this will float up because it's on a hinge there. That'll go float up, and even the big lobsters will be able to get out, escape.
These coastline communities where this coveted species lives see the value in a sustainable fishery.
And people are looking out to it.
It gives the community another source of income, and naturally there's a lot of money goes back into the community from that.
Heading out now with these boats full of traps that inshore fishing crews will check over the coming weeks, hoping for calm waters and a market hungry for lobster. Layla Baudouin, CBC News.
That makes me want to go over to the Northern Peninsula because it's beautiful. The weather is stunning over there today.
Yeah, it certainly is. Not the case here in the east. Most of eastern Newfoundland seeing some sort of snow or wet snow earlier today. But I had to share this photo with you because yesterday it was not snowing. There was no snow on the ground. But Margie captured this photo. It looks like it's on some sort of camera. But take a look at this. So the moose moves over her daffodils, and she said that, the only thing that she thought she'd have to protect the daffodils from was the weather, but that's not the case with that moose moving through. So I thought that was some fun to share with you in what is now wintry weather in the east. Temperatures today topping out at only 1 degree, and that was earlier today in St. John's. But the temperatures for other parts of the province, absolutely beautiful. Spring-like day in Deer Lake, Corner Brook, Stephenville. All between 10 to 11 degrees. But Happy Valley Goose Bay, you were the hot spot today, reached your high near 12 degrees, and you're still sitting there right now as well with those temperatures. Still beautiful evening happening on the west coast of the island, as well as parts of Central, about 7 degrees in Central. Burgeo sitting around 8. but those temperatures are much cooler further east, down to about -1 right now in St. John's. And this is a live shot outside the studio. You can't see a whole lot. It's covered in some wet snow, but like I said, those temperatures are quite cool. We've got a northeast wind around 26 kilometers per hour, gusting around 35 kilometers per hour. And if we take a look at some of the cameras across the province, we can see not a whole lot. It's not sticking everywhere across the island, particularly in the Avalon, particularly in the higher elevations. Whitburn seeing some wet snow, but nothing sticking, and Paddy's Pond right now seeing some snow. But you head over to the west coast, beautiful blue sky. Cartwright, you're seeing some sunshine as well. So certainly just depends on where you are across the province. Now, taking a look at what's happening right now, we've got that northerly flow that's driving those cooler temperatures. And here's a look at the current satellite and radar. This snow is moving off fairly quickly, or will move off fairly quickly over the next couple of hours here in the east anyway. And then a fairly quiet night expected. Now, up across Labrador, you may see a few showers overnight tonight, maybe even a few flurries for the north coast, but that's about it. Clouds will just generally be on the increase across the island as we head towards the early morning hours, but temperatures tonight are going to be quite chilly. You'd be sitting somewhere in the minus single digits right across the board. Now, those northerly winds in the east are still going to stick around. You're still looking at your gusts between 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. And then for Labrador, hovering near or just a little bit below the 0 degree mark as your overnight lows. Now, into tomorrow, fairly unsettled day for the most part, just especially up across Labrador. At least the first part of the day, you're going to see the chances some showers or flurries, mainly towards the coast. And then Northern Peninsula is similar forecast, mostly cloudy, but we may see some sun for the eastern half of the island into the afternoon at times. That's certainly possible. And then for Central, you're still looking at the potential for a few scattered showers through the afternoon hours. And then as we head towards the evening, that should head a little bit further east. Most of Labrador will continue to see clearing through the overnight and into early Saturday morning. And then as far as the rest of the island goes, by the time we get into Saturday morning, we'll likely see at least a lovely start for the Northern Peninsula and parts of the West Coast as well. So our temperatures tomorrow will vary depending on where you are. The good news is that in the morning it'll be a bit breezy, but the winds will ease as the day goes on. Now, temperatures across the Avalon will likely be a little on the cool side, around 4 degrees. Inland areas, you'll likely reach 8, maybe even 9 degrees through the day. That will be the case for the Bonavista Peninsula and the Burin Peninsula. You may even reach around 11 degrees. That will be the story through Central. West Coast, your temperatures are a little bit on the cool side, anywhere from 6 to 8 degrees. And again, the Northern Peninsula, about 2 to 4. And that's the potential for you to see some showers or flurries. But there's still some sun in the mix there as well, especially into the afternoon. And then for Labrador, a little cooler than today, that's for sure. For Happy Valley Goose Bay, you should hover around 8, maybe 9 degrees as your daytime highs. The coast, about 1 to 4. And then for Lab West, you're looking at your temperatures between 3 and 5 degrees as your daytime highs. But again, there should be some sunshine in there as well. I'll break down your long-range forecast coming up a little later.
minors are family, and they have to take care of each other.
It's truly an honor as a Newfoundlander to be able to go out there and bring back a representation of all of the Newfoundlanders that weren't able to come back.
Love the world around you because it does shimmer with the impossible sometimes made possible.
Well, patients have already moved into the new mental health and addictions facility in St. John's, but Premier Andrew Furey officially opened it this morning with a ribbon cutting.
Oh, hey!
This not only is a modern facility that has modern infrastructure, it represents a modern vision for what mental health and addictions treatment should be across the province. And while it is located in St. John's, this is a provincial piece of infrastructure that will provide patient rooms, but it is also a beacon to those suffering with mental health and addictions that things are changing. It represents a new approach for mental health and addictions, a modern approach for mental health and addictions, one that has been informed by advocates and patients alike. And I would think that there aren't very few other institutions across the country that have that fully reflected in a modern and new piece of infrastructure.
I think that the destigmatization of mental health by having it on a general medicine campus is really, really important. And I think that one of the important things here was that the construction of the building was informed by the clinical imperatives and by the patient-centric nature of the building, of what we wanted. And the fact that we were able to get that clinical need married to the type of building we were after was really, really good. And the extra services that are being put on, like the gym and the spiritual rooms and the horticulture and the art classes, people will say they're all superfluous. They're not. They're critical to the recovery of patients who've got mental illness because they're here for quite a long time.
It was one of the first files that was on my desk, and it feels like there's some closure. It's rare in these jobs that you get to see a project from beginning to end, and to be able to see this now come to the conclusion with a ribbon cut is a special moment for me as a premier, but also as a physician, recognizing that this was a much needed piece of infrastructure.
From healthcare to housing and homelessness, the Signal's host Adam Walsh moderated a forum at Memorial University's Signal Hill campus this week. It was hosted by End Homelessness St. John's and Choices for Youth. They asked candidates to weigh in on the hot-button subject and respond to the community's questions.
Beyond short-term solutions, what is your long-term vision for the downtown core? Will you commit to securing funding and supporting a community center in the downtown? Joanne Thompson, the question's for you.
Thank you. And actually, this was part of a conversation that I had with the neighborhood in the downtown. And I think what we need to be really mindful of is we are seeing, and I think it's not difficult for any of us to walk in the downtown and realize that we're seeing vulnerability, and we're seeing the effects of a multitude of challenges, the need for more supports at that lower level, the entry point in that continuum. We're seeing what addictions look like, and so our response has to be open to whatever it is that we need to do to assist people who live in this community to feel safe, but also to support the individuals who are caught in the cycle of homelessness, addictions, mental illness, because I think for many it is mental illness, and I want to be really clear in language around that, and the supports that we need to put in place to support an individual where they are. So I commit 100% to continuing to work to find solutions. But again, I want to say the solutions we need to find have to be found through collaborative engagement. People know what it is they need, and I don't think it's the federal government to impose that, but we need to be at the table, and we all need to support the outcomes.
David Brazel. 100% supportive of it. My career was based on finding the resources that were necessary to offer the programs and services to the people where they're most comfortable. And the most comfortable ability to do that is within their own realm, where they're comfortable, where the services are, where they need to be, where they live themselves. The best way to do that is to collaborate with the stakeholders. And those would be the residents, those would be the not-for-profits, it would be the municipalities here. I mean, we've seen this a multitude of times here. The City of St. John's have been doing that for years in developing partnerships with particular organizations or building a facility that then can be engaged with other agencies, if it's Boys and Girls Clubs, if it's the community centers in various regions here. So, I mean, putting a physical location in an area where people are easily accessible makes sense for everybody because the professionals can be there, easier way for them to collaborate among each other, supportive services that can be shared as part of those processes. So, you know, quick answer is 100%. I've advocated for that for most of my career and will continue to do it here and see the value of the challenges we have downtown and putting those resources there that are necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Otis, you're up. So the question was whether we would help, we would advocate for the development of the downtown and the community center here. And I would say yes, 100%. And as I've said before, I'm the only candidate that can guarantee that I would do that. I'm not bound by the party. So I can go to Ottawa and I guarantee I will find other MPs that want similar things in their ridings, that want a similar development, and I will collaborate with them so that the benefit comes back to this riding. I don't care what's happening in Toronto. Well, I care, but not to the extent that I care what's happening here in St. John's, out in Torbay, Flat Rock. That's what I care. And if the people in those towns or here in the downtown of St. John's say, this is what we want, please go to Ottawa and get it for us, I will find other people in Ottawa to collaborate with that want the same thing for their areas, and together we will get it for our areas, including downtown Toronto, downtown St. John's, to get a community center built here. Mary Shortall.
Well, I live downtown, and I understand what happens in neighborhoods where there are community organizations and a community building where people can gather and get some support and have after-school care and all those things, and I see the difference that it makes. I also am a member of a party that cares very deeply about those issues and has part of its principles and values caring for people in their communities. And so even though I'm a member of a political party, I'm pretty sure that I can bring that passion to Ottawa and get lots of support from members of the NDP on that. I've also seen provincially the NL-NDP leader, Jim Dinn, work tirelessly in an area very close to my house to build a community because the people of the community have asked for that support. And there's been a lot of work done towards that. And I would think that as a federal government, that we have no choice but to be supportive. And so the answer would clearly be yes, but it also would be in collaboration with the community itself and the people of the community itself and working with all levels of government too.
Thank you, Mary.
Well, as we heard earlier, New Brunswick Premier Susan Holt is in St. John's to sign an agreement to increase trade with this province. But both premiers say there are some sectors that are off limits when it comes to breaking down trade barriers. Premier Andrew Furey says there will be no bargaining over fish processing outside the province.
That there are no fly zones. Like there is, we are not prepared to talk about minimum processing requirements, for example. That would be a death blow to rural Newfoundland and Labrador. We're not interested in that. We're not doing that. So that is a position that is offsides for us. Equally, I'm sure she would not appreciate me us taking all her lumber into Corner Brook Pulp and Paper, and that's none of that makes sense. So there are no fly zones on both sides. What we have said for the areas where there is not. Let's make sure that the officials and the relevant ministers understand what we've agreed to and approach it with the same degree of urgency and pace that we've tried to establish.
Do we have Trump to thank for this MOU? Would this have happened if there wasn't a threat from the U.S.?
Look, I hesitate to show any gratitude to President Trump for anything, but we were already working together with respect to the physician credentialing, for example, occurred before President Trump. In fact, it was the early days of the Biden administration. I think the rise of President Trump's second administration has led all Canadians to focus more acutely on what makes sense for the country and specifically for the region in which they live.
The one thing I'm thankful for is Canadians and New Brunswickers who have really dug into buying local and buying Canadian. And it used to be easy and you didn't think twice about just going to the grocery store and picking up a product. But now New Brunswickers are online looking at what Newfoundland makes. They want to buy from our closest neighbors and friends, and we want to make that easier and easier for them. So I'm very thankful that Canadians are looking to each other's products. The Premier Fury sent me an amazing box of Purity products for Christmas this year, and I thought, oh, I can't wait to see some of these things on the shelves. My kids loved the strawberry syrup. I should say thank you for that. So I'm very thankful that Canadians and New Brunswickers have committed to buying local, and we want to make it easier and easier for them to buy Newfoundland, to buy Nova Scotia, to buy PEI, and to do more trade with each other, because that's going to make all of our provinces stronger.
Shifting to national news now, police have shot and killed a man at Toronto's Pearson Airport. They say the man was involved in a dispute with a group of people outside a terminal when police were called.
Our officers spent an amount of time trying to resolve the dispute, an immense amount of de-escalation and engagement with the parties. However, abruptly, one of the individuals produced a firearm at our officers, and I must say that there were 3 officers that responded. As a result of that, to protect themselves and the community and the passengers here at the airport, 2 of the officers engaged with the individual. As a result, the subject was shot.
The man in his 30s was pronounced dead. Officials say no officers were injured. Ontario's Special Investigations Unit is looking into the incident. The airport says flights are continuing to operate normally. Well, Ashley, the weather may be cold out there, but the summer festival season is starting to heat up. Iceberg Alley announced its lineup for this year's event.
Yeah, that's right. We now know the lineup of 9 of the 10 nights in June. Bands like Mother Mother, Old Crow Medicine Show, ZZ Top, July Talk, and Gowan.
Yes, there's also a bunch of local bands that are on the bill, including Shanny Ganuk, Mick Davis, Tim Baker, Nick Earl, and Rum Ragged. Yeah, so pretty good lineup.
Decent.
Good bands there, yeah, for sure. So yeah, that makes me think of summer.
So close.
Yeah, it was
That's
hard.
so far away.
It's hard looking out the window this morning, I must say, and seeing all the snow out there.
I know, especially because we've been hinting at spring, fairly early this year, that's for sure. But yeah, other parts of the province seeing a beautiful spring-like day today.
It's not going to last, though.
It's not. That's the good
it's
thing
melting
about
already.
That's
yeah.
right. That's the good thing about this time of year too, is when we do see snow or any sort of accumulation, it's gone the next day, and that will be the case tomorrow. That's for sure. Let's take a look at what's going on weather-wise as we head towards the weekend. So we're going to see a bit of an unsettled day tomorrow, and then as we head into Saturday morning, some of us should see some sunshine, at least to start the day, especially up across parts of Labrador, Northern Peninsula, maybe even parts of the Avalon as well through the day. And then basically just looking at some cloudy periods into the afternoon. Nothing significant for your Saturday. It should stay dry pretty much across the board, but we are watching this mess well to our west on Saturday. That will move in Saturday night and start to bring some rain in the evening hours, particularly for the southwestern corner of the island. And then as far as those temperatures go, though, quite mild in some areas, especially if you're away from the onshore flow. Temperatures should reach anywhere from the single digits to even the double digits for the big land, anywhere from 11 to 12 degrees. And then that will be the story across the island as well. Central areas and the west coast, you should reach between 11 and 12 degrees. Same thing for the Burin Peninsula. Otherwise, single digits, about 5 to 7 degrees will be the daytime high. For even the Avalon areas inland, though, you can expect to see some milder temperatures, likely reaching a little warmer than that. Then we see our next system move in through the night and into early Sunday morning. Most of the island will be seeing rain. Even parts of southeastern Labrador, you may get into some of that rain depending on just the exact track of the system. But for now, looking like some heavy rain possible on southern areas of the island. And then as we head into Monday even, we're looking at that potential for some showers as well. Temperatures will reach between 7 to 9 degrees for most of the island, Northern Peninsula, a tad cooler than that. But take a look at the temperatures across Labrador. Happy Valley, Goose Bay towards Cartwright, 12 to 14 degrees is your daytime highs. Otherwise, you're sitting in the single digits. But again, sunshine. So a pretty lovely Sunday. Now, for the long-range forecast, voting day on Monday does look a little wet at this point, but it will be mild. You're looking at a high near 10 degrees in St. John's and eastern Newfoundland through the day. Now, it does look like this should stay all as rain, but it's going to be an unsettled couple of days right into Tuesday as well, with a little bit of a drop in temperatures around 6 degrees. For central Newfoundland, a little bit cooler. You'll likely sit around 3 degrees through the day with some rain on Monday, warming up rather, on Tuesday with your temperature around 8. Same thing for western Newfoundland with that cool down, but recovering beautifully for Tuesday at 11 degrees. And then for eastern Labrador, you're looking at a beautiful day. Temperatures between 11 to 14 degrees, a little bit of rain by the time we get into Tuesday. Then for western Labrador, your temperatures between 6 and 8 to start next week, and a few showers on Monday morning. Our weather photo taken in St. John's. How great is this photo?
Wow, I love it.
It looks like the clouds are a highway, doesn't it? Wanda shared this great shot with us. We love them. Keep them coming. You can send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Yeah, I love how it lines up. Great symmetry there. Great shot. Love that. Thank you so much. All right. Yeah. So Monday, voting day. Election day, big day for the entire country, but the weather's looking pretty decent. So if you haven't voted in the advance polls already, like 7 million people across the country did, then in some places in the province it's a pretty decent day to get out.
At least it's not going to be snowing. So that's good.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for us. Thank you so much for watching.
Good night.